In this tutorial, we will have a look how we can create a top-down 2D movement. As you can see, we're gonna have a look on this. In Depending upon which direction we're going, we're just playing that animation clip, and once we are not moving at all, we're just playing idle animation clip. Of course, I will give a link in the description of all of this sprite that we're going to use in this tutorial. And if you want to get the project file, the game, and all kind of things, you can join with a membership on my YouTube channel, or you can go to my Patreon and you can take a membership. And membership, a lot of benefits comes. You can just take that as well as on YouTube you can check the benefits you can get through and joining by joining with an membership. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this topic. I have an example scene. As you can see, we have tile map or and in the main camera and hierarchy, as you can see. So what we can do, let's go over to project tab, then assets, sprite. Underneath our sprite folder, I have player folder. So I'm gonna select that sprite, as you can see. So select that sprite, go over to inspector and click on sprite editor. You need to cut them off individually, it will be at once. So what you have to do, you need to go over to sprite mode in inspector, select single to multiple, and then scroll down, select filter mode to point no filter, because this is an pixel art, so that's why. And after doing that, make sure you pixel per unit to choose a less number, something like 16 I have already chosen. So I'm going to scroll down. After doing all of this thing, click on apply, and then go over to sprite editor tab. In the top left you can find in sprite editor tab slide, so just click on that and select automatic to create by cell count, and count how many columns and rows it has uh, six columns, and I guess 10 rows. So you can just put 10 rows and 10 rows and six columns, not six column actually, six column, I don't know exactly. 1 2 3 4, just play around and you're gonna get a hang of it. So I already cut it off individually. After slicing, click on this slice or in the bottom, and then click on this apply in the top right in sprite editor tab. So I'm gonna select this game tip one more time, and let's go to that sprite sheet and click on this arrow now. As you can see, it's cut it off individually. So I'm gonna select the first sprite. Let's select that and drag it over to the scene view or into the hierarchy. So I have it over here. Let's select this move tool from here and let's move it somewhere around in the center of our main camera, and let's call it something like player 0 to let's call it player. And let's add some components to this game object. Firstly, I'm gonna add a rigid body, and we're gonna set the gravity scale to 0, so it's not gonna fall down due to our gravity. So let's click on this add component and find by typing rigid body 2D, and click on this rigid body 2D. Select gravity scale to, we're gonna select gravity scale to 0, because we don't want our player game object to fall down. And make sure you just select collision detection to continuous, and freeze the rotation about z axis, so it's not gonna rotate or flip like that so weirdly. So that's why we're gonna check this. And interpolate, to select interpolate for smoother movement, and it's done. And we are ready to create the script player movement. So let's create a script to move this player game object up and down, and horizontally as well. So let's go to project tab, assets, right click, create folder, and name that folder to something like script. I already have created, I have it over here. Then go over to that script folder, right click, create C# script, animate to something like player movement. So I already have created this player movement script. So I'm gonna select this player game object, and let's select that player script movement and drag it over to add component section, and double click that script to open it up in Visual Studio. So we can see by default we have start and update function. You can ignore this fixed update. uh, and let's go to top of our class. Before we do, what we want, we're gonna get some input. So we want to move this player game object up and down and horizontally. So to do so, we're gonna move over to this update function, because update function runs every single frame. So we're gonna check every single frame. So first thing, let's talk about the horizontal movement. So if I select this move tool and move it horizontally, we're going to talk about horizontal movement first. So let's go to skip, and we will get this input dot get axis. You can use raw to for just if you do snapping, if you want snapping movement, something like strict movement, you can just use this gate axis raw. But if you want a little bit smoother, then you can use this gate axis instead of gate axis raw. So but I'm gonna use gate axis raw and make this parenthesis, and in quotation you need to pass the axis name in which axis you want to move. So first thing, we're gonna move horizontally, so make sure you just type or spell it correctly as I am doing right over here, and close that up with some my colon. So input dot get axis horizontal, this function right over here checks right arrow and left arrow, as well as A and D key. Let's suppose you hold down A key, so this gonna give -1, and if you hold down D key instead of A key, then it's gonna give +1 or 1. And if you just don't hold both of them, then it's gonna return as 0. So what we want to do, we're gonna store this into a variable, in a vector2 variable. Because why we gonna use vector2? Because we want to move this player game object up and down horizontally as well, and we do know vector2 has two axes to move, x axis and y axis. So let's that's why we're gonna go over to top of our class, and we're gonna make it private. It doesn't need to be public. That is a vector2, and we can call this one something like movement, and close that up with some colon. So over here, what we're gonna do now, we're gonna store this into this movement variable. So we're gonna set movement equal to this. But the problem is that this is a one single data. It's and over here movement right over here is a two-dimensional data. It has x-axis and y-axis. Why? Because this vector2 has two axes. It has x-axis and y-axis, and this gonna give a single value. It can be -1, +1 or 0. So we need to store this into a single variable. So that's why we're gonna move over to this movement, and we will gonna access the x-axis dot x. So this movement dot x, basically this vector2 movement in the x-axis can be, this can be -1. This movement dot x over here can be -1, +1 or 0, depending upon what key we holding down. If we hold down a key, so this gonna give us -1. So that's why movement dot x, basically in the x-axis of movement vector, gonna be -1. But if we hold down D key, it's gonna give 1. So this movement dot x right over here gonna be 1. And we're gonna use, if we move to Unity, and we will use this rigid body 2D to move our player game object. So that's why we attach this rigid body 2D component to this player game object to move around. So we need a reference of this rigid body 2D so we can move in horizontally. So let's go to script, and let's go to top of our class. Let's make a public field for our rigid body to get the reference. So make sure you just making it public so we can see underneath our player movement kit right over here. Then we can just drag this rigid body right there, so we're gonna have the reference. So let's go to script, and let's create a rigid body 2D, and we can call this one RB, short for rigid body. And what we want to do now, and make sure you just go to the Unity once you save your script, and select this rigid body and drag it right there in RB field. By default that's gonna be empty, so we need to drag it right there. So to move, we're gonna we're gonna go over to this update function. After moving in the x-axis, basically changing or storing the x value, the value in this movement dot x, we're gonna move. To move, we will use this rb dot move position function, and this function right over here, I'm gonna take the vector in which in which direction we want to go, or it's gonna take the target position or the position where we want to go. So we're gonna pass this movement basically where we want to go. This we're gonna pass this movement because movement can be -1, +1, or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. So we can go left and right because it's gonna be -1, +1 in the x axis. So that's why we're gonna pass in this parenthesis movement, and we also need to multiply this movement with time dot delta time. Why? Because to make a frame rate constant, sorry, this right over here, the update, sorry, the movement just gonna be constant. So it's gonna not gonna be vary something like 2 then becomes 3. It's always gonna be 1. It can be -1, +1, or 0 in the x axis. And if we multiply with some speed, it can be much better. So let's multiply with some unit as well, something like 5f, and close that up with semicolon. But let's make a variable for this as well. We're gonna make it public, so we don't need to come to the script and change this value over again and again to match up a correct speed. So we will go to top of our class once more, and let's make a public float, and we can call this one to something like move speed, and by default I'm gonna set it to something like 5f, and let's replace this 5f with our move speed. Sorry, move speed, and control s to save your code. And now let's move over to Unity. So we should able to see that our player game object just gonna move horizontally with that much of speed. It because it can be -1. So if it's become -1, we will go to left direction. If it's become 1, then we're gonna go over to right direction. So as you can see RB, and it says none. So let's take this rigid body and drag it right there. Now we have the reference. So if we just click on this play button in the top, and let's have a look. So once we hold down a key, it's gonna go to left direction. Why? Because that will be -1. So we can see, so we get a problem. The problem is that if we get out of play mode and go to this script, so we just type it a movement. Basically we have to add this position with our current position. So basically we need to go over to the rb dot position, and top of rb dot position right over here means current position, and top of that plus we're gonna add the movement basically where we want to go. So that is the thing. And if we let's firstly save the script, and let's move over to Unity now. So we're gonna go to right direction or left direction depending upon what key we holding down. So let's hit this play button one more time. Now basically we need to add the current position as well, and top of the current position we need to add the position where we want to go, basically that movement. Now we are indeed moving left and right, and there is nothing janky happening. So let's get out of play mode, and we also need to tackle this up and down. So let's get out of play mode, and let's go to script one more time. So for now we're gonna use input dot get axis draw function one more time, and for this time we will check for the vertical axis, basically y axis or up and down. So in quotation we have to type vertical, and close that up with semicolon, and we're gonna store. So this can be +1 or -1 and 0 depending upon which key we holding down. So if we hold down up arrow or W key, then it's gonna give +1, and if we hold down S or down arrow key, then it's gonna give -1. But if we don't hold down both of them, so it can be 0. So let's store this result. So basically whatever we get, let's store this into a variable. So we're gonna store that variable into y-axis of this movement, so we can go up and down. So let's go to movement, then sorry, not move speed, movement dot y equal to this. So this movement dot y can be -1, +1, or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. I hope you get the idea. But the problem is that if we hold down D and W key, we're gonna move diagonally a little bit faster. So if you use Pythagoras theorem, let's suppose we moving, if we hold down W and D key, so we're gonna move to the right 1 unit, as well as we're gonna move to the up direction 1 unit. So you can calculate with Pythagoras theorem, which is a square plus b square equal to c square. So you can just get the length of the diagonal vector, which will be a little bit bigger or little bit faster or little bit large, you can say. So that's why we're gonna move a little bit faster in diagonal. So to restrict that, what we have to do, we just have to write after movement dot normalize. So it's gonna normalize the vector right away. So even we are holding down D and W key, we're gonna move in the diagonal direction. So we will move with the same speed, which is 5 unit, as well as going to the right, left, up and down. We're gonna move with the same speed as well as in diagonally. So that is the thing. So make sure you just do that, and Control S to save your code and go over to Unity. So we're just moving our player game object with our rigid body 2D, rigid body 2D. And now if we just click on this play button in the top, and let's have a look on this. Just wait for to compile, and if I just hold down D key, we moving the right direction, and if I just hold down W key, we moving up, S key down, A key left, right. And if we try to move diagonally, we just moving with the same speed as we moving to the you can say up and down and horizontally. So we moving with the same speed. So I hope you get the idea. So I'm gonna get out of play mode, and make sure you just make this one prefab, basically means copy of this game object. So select from the hierarchy this player game object and drag it over to assets, or create a assets prefab folder and drag it right over there. So I'm gonna drag it in my prefab folder I already have created. Let's make the animation right now. To do so, we need the animation tab. To get that, you need to go over to window in the top, then scroll down says animation, and the shortcut key you can see Control 6, as well as the animator tab you can find it. So I have it over here, and in order to create the animation first, we're gonna use another way to achieve that. To do so, firstly let's create a animation folder to keep all of the animation in that folder, to keep it a little more clean and organized. So we can just find if we need anything like that. So we can just go over to assets, right click on assets, then create folder, and let's call this folder to animation. And now let's go to project tab, assets, and then sprite, and let's find the player. I have it over here. Let's click on this arrow. So we have site work. So let's from 1 2 3 4 5 6, so select all of them by holding down shift, the site work you can say. Select all of the site work animation clip by holding down shift, and drag it top of this player game object, and it's gonna create the animation right away, as you can see. So we're gonna go over to assets, and in assets we created a animation folder, as you can see. So let's open it up by double clicking on it, and let's create a subfolder as well for our player animation clip. Let's right click, then new folder. Let's call this folder to something like player animation, and let's open up this subfolder by double clicking on it, and we have to name the animation. Let's call it something like player underscore right underscore work, and click on save. So we don't have the left work animation. So for that, we're gonna use the same animation clip, which is right work, and we will name it to something like left work. And when we are moving to the left direction, then we just gonna flip our character, so it's gonna seem that we are going left direction or walking left direction. So that's why I'm gonna select one more time, and it's preferable to use a, you can just open up Photoshop and you can just flip this character. So use a software which flips your character, so you can just use that. It's pretty much good to way, but I'm not gonna do that right over here. So I'm gonna select all of this animation clip one more time, the right work you can say. Let's select and drag it top of this player game object. Let's go over to assets, animation, a player and animation, and let's call this one, I'm gonna call this left work, and click on save. So we have now two animation clip. So if we select this player game object, go over to animation tab and click on this play button. Oh, this is not work, actually this is ideal, well, this is right ideal, so we need to find the work instead. So let's scroll down, let's go over to that sprite and click on that arrow. We need to find it, so we have over here instead, just find it and you will get of it. So we have over here from this six frame I guess. So let's select by holding down shift and drag it over to this player game object. Let's go to assets, animation, player animation, and I'm gonna replace this right over, click, select that and click yes. Do you want to replace it? Yes. So let's click on yes. Now if I just go to select this player game object, go over to animation tab and click on this play button, we can see indeed we are walking to the right direction. So we're going to do the same thing as well for our left walking. So I'm going to select the same sprite by holding down shift, those animation clip. Let's drag it over to player game object one more time. Let's go to assets, animation, player animation, and let's replace this left walk. Yes, I want, and now it's done. And we need to create the top work once we are going up as well as we going down or front work you can say. So let's select, so we have front over here six sprite. So let's select all of them by holding down shift and drag it over to this player game object. And let's call this, let's go to assets, animation, player animation, let's call this one top work. So I'm gonna call this one top work, and let's create the down work as well. So we need to find firstly, so we have over here, let's select that and drag it over to player game object. It's gonna create the animation right away. Let's go to assets, animation, player animation, and let's call this one down work, or we can just call it front work, but instead I'm gonna call down work and click on save. And if we select this player game object, move over to animation tab and select play all of the animation we have left. Basically left, we just name it left, but we're not moving or playing the left animation clip. Instead we will flip our player game object. Let's select the top work we have and the down work. Let's select down work. And now if we move over to animator tab, we can see all of the animation just added up right over here. We have left work, top work, and down work. Let's suppose you want to set any default state, any of them. So what you can do, you can just right click on that animation clip and set as layer default state. But I'm gonna leave with I'm gonna leave with let's create the ideal first as well, because we created a player right work. And if I just click on this play button in the top, it's gonna play the right work animation clip right away. Why? Because that is a default one. So we don't want this right work to be default one. Instead we want to play a ideal animation clip and it just looking to the down direction. So let's get out of play mode and let's create another animation clip. So let's go to project tab and we have the ideal. So I'm going to select this 6 frame by holding down shift and let's drag it over to player game object. Let's go to assets, animation, player animation, and let's call this something like player ideal, player underscore ideal, and click on save. And if I just select this player game object and select this ideal, we just playing ideal animation clip. And now let's go to animator tab and I'm gonna right click on this ideal and set as layer default state. And now this ideal animation clip will be played right away. So we're gonna create a blend tree blend tree, and we will remove all of this animation from Animator because we don't need it. Instead, we're gonna create a blend tree, and it's gonna take care of all of the animation, or which animation should we play. So I'm gonna select this one. Let's delete that, select that, and let's select delete. And to create the blend tree, what you have to do, you need to right click on this Animator tab, and then create state, and in the bottom you can see from new plane tree. So just click on that, and it's gonna create the plane right away, and you can name it. So I'm gonna name it to something like, let's select that, go over to inspector, and let's call it movement, sorry, movement. And uh, and if we just double click on this movement or this blend tree, we are opening the blend tree, as you can see. And I'm gonna call this one movement as well, so let's call it movement in the inspector. And we have to right now we have to drag the animation clip right over here. Basically, to do so, we need to go over to inspector, inspector, and in the bottom you can see, basically right over here, it says list is empty. So just click on this plus icon, and it says add motion field, and you can assume that add animation clip. So just click on that, and it's gonna just gonna take the motion or the clip you want to play. You need to drag the clip right over here. So we're gonna tackle firstly we're gonna tackle the horizontal one, and later on we're gonna tackle the vertical one. So let's hit this plus icon one more time, because and click on motion, add motion field, basically the animation clip. And because we want to move horizontally, and we have two animation clip to play, which is left and right animation. So let's go to project tab, then assets, animation, and player animation folder. And I'm gonna lock this in the inspector. You can see lock button, so just lock it right over here. And we have to find the player right work and left work. We have it over here. So this is right work, so I'm gonna select that one and drag it over to this field right over here. Basically, you need to drag the clip right over here one by one. And let's select the left one now, and let's drag it over here. And we are done. But we're gonna move up and down as well, not horizontally as well as up and down. So that's why from this blend type to 1D, we're gonna choose this 2D simple direction. So it's gonna add the vertical as well. So hit this plus icon one more time, and add click on add motion field, and we need to drag the motion. So let's tackle the top. So let's select the top animation clip from that folder, and drag it over to this right over here. Let's click on one more time, because we're gonna have the down as well. So let's select the down one, we have it over here, and let's drag it over here. And what we're gonna do now, and we're gonna unlock it, and let's go let's unlock that. Let's select this player game object, go over to Animator tab, and we can see in parameter base layer we have movement, basically the plane tree, and we can just go to base layer, and we are over here. So basically we need to make transition from this player idle to player movement. And if I just double click on this movement, and movement just gonna take off this this which animation should we play. So let's create some certain parameter to just play this animation clip. So once we are going to the right direction, then in that moment we need to play the right work animation clip, and once we going down direction, we need to play this player down work animation clip. So let's create some certain parameter to just move around with this. So to do so, in the Animator tab you can see parameters. So just click on this play button and choose this float. And we can firstly we're gonna call this one speed, and let's create two parameters as well for going up and down, and horizontal as well. So we're gonna create two parameters for horizontal one and for vertical as well. So let's click on this plus icon, and I'm gonna remove this blend. So let's select that and delete, or delete, let's delete that. Let's create for horizontal. Make sure you just select the float. Let's call this horizontal. Let's click one more time float, and let's call this one vertical. And let's go to base layer now in Animator tab, and we need to go over to this player idle to player movement, and then from this player movement we can play which animation should we should need to play. But before that we need to make transition from this player idle to player movement once we are moving left and right, up and down. So we need to make transition from this player idle to player this movement blend tree. To do so, let's right click on player idle and make transition to player movement, and select this transition or this arrow and go over to inspector, and it says has exit time. So we're gonna uncheck this, because as soon as player is moving we need to move over to this movement blend tree, and its movement blend tree just gonna tackle which animation should we should play. And we're gonna untick this fixed duration, and let's select this transition duration to 0, because we just want to go immediately. And in the bottom if you scroll down it says condition, so you need to choose a condition in which condition you want to go. So let's hit this plus icon. For this we're gonna choose this speed parameter, so let's choose this. So if this is small speed parameter, we're gonna choose, sorry, just wait a little bit. So we're going to choose this speed parameter. If this speed parameter is some smaller number with compared to some smaller number, so we can check for something like 0.1 or 0.04 or 0.01. So if this speed parameter is greater than 0.1, so it's going to move to this movement plane tree, and we will stuck forever on it. So we also need to make transition from this movement plane tree to player idle. So once we are not moving, we need to play this player idle animation clip instead of playing those. So that's why we're gonna right click on this movement blend tree and make transition back to player idle, and let's select this arrow now. Let's go over to inspector. I'm gonna untick has exit time. As soon as possible when we are not moving, we need to play player idle animation clip right away, and I'm gonna untick this fixed duration. Let's set this to 0, scroll down, and condition it says empty. So let's hit this plus icon. For this we're gonna choose the speed parameter, and we will choose if this speed parameter is lesser than some smaller number, so we're gonna check for 0.1. So if that is the case, then it's gonna play this player idle animation clip. So if I just hit this play button in the top and try to set this speed parameter manually to 1, and we do know that 1 will be greater than 0.1, so the condition getting met. So that's why it's gonna go over to this movement plane tree. So if I select this transition right over here and set this speed parameter to 1, we can see this movement just stuck over there, because we also need to set some parameter in this plane tree. And if I set back to 0, this is speed parameter 0, as you can see, indeed player idle animation clip is playing. Why? Because if we set this speed parameter to 0, the condition over here getting true. So speed if we select the back transition, so speed if we set this to 0, so speed lesser than 0.1, we do definitely know that 0 is lesser than 0.1, so the condition over here getting true. So that's why it's moving over to player idle animation clip once again. So let's get out of play mode, and then we need to set some certain parameter in our plane tree. To do so, let's double click on this movement plane tree, and it's gonna we're gonna go over to that. And now if I select this movement plane tree right over here and go over to inspector, and we need to set, so we have player right work, player left work, you can say player top work, and player down work. So once we are moving right side, so we need to say, we're gonna set that this horizontal, so we need to choose this parameter. So in the top parameter you can see plane it says, so the first thing we're gonna check for horizontal, and the second parameter we're gonna check for vertical. So for horizontal, once we moving to the right direction, so we're gonna set this horizontal parameter to 1 in the x only. So we're not gonna play in the y axis, and you need to leave this 1. So we're gonna put 1 right over here, and once we are moving to the left direction, then in that moment we need to play the left work animation. So that's why I'm gonna set this horizontal parameter in the x-axis -1. So we're gonna put it -1. And once we are moving to the top direction, basically top, so in the top direction we need to play top work animation clip. So that's why in the y axis we're gonna put 1, and in the x axis we're gonna set to 0. Basically we don't want to play the once we are moving to the top direction, we should not play the you can say the left work or right work. Instead we need to play top work animation clip. So that's why we put 1 in the y axis, and in this x axis 0. So we're gonna do the same thing in the x axis 0, and once we are moving down or we need to play the down work animation clip, so we're gonna put in the y axis -1. Basically we just setting this vertical parameter for second condition, this vertical parameter to -1 or +1 or 0, depending upon which we are moving. Now what we can do, if we select this player, sorry, I'm gonna clear the console. Let's select this player, go over to Animator tab and select this. So it says vertical and we getting an error. So we just vertical. So now it's fine. Okay, so now if we take this red dot right over here in movement blend tree in inspector, and if we take this to the right, we are playing, as you can see in the preview in the bottom, we can see the right animation is playing. And once I take this red dot in the top, we playing the top work animation clip, and once we just bringing down, we just playing the down work, and once we moving to the left, we playing the right work instead of left. Basically we just gonna flip our player game object to the left direction. So I hope you get the idea that how you can just do that. So we need to set this parameter, this horizontal and vertical, to 1 -1 depending upon which direction we are moving. So we can set that. So to do so, we need to go over to script. So before we go and select this player game object, then animator tab and go over to base layer. So we also need to make transition from this movement. And now if I just click on this play button and set this speed parameter to 1, it's gonna move over to this movement blend tree, and it's gonna play the work animation clip right away. I really apologize for the background noises coming out. And if we set this one to, as you can see, the right work animation is playing. Now if I try to move up and down, we're not moving at all, or we're not playing that top work or top down work animation clip. So we need to play that. So we need to play that. So let's get out of play mode. To do so, let's go over to script, and what we need a reference of this animator component in player game object we can see. So once we created this animation clip, this animator component is just added up, and this is responsible for playing our animation clip, switching animation, all of kind of things. So we need a reference of this animator tab, then we can set the parameter. So let's go to top of let's go to script, and over here we're gonna say let's make a public animator field for our animator. Let's call it animator and close that out with some colon, and make sure you just do that same thing as we have done for our rigid body. Once you go to the script, an animator field just gonna appear. So what you have to do, you need to take this animator and drag it right there, so you're gonna have the reference. Let's go to script now, and what we will do over here in the bottom, firstly we need to move over to this blend tree, and this blend tree just gonna take care of which animation should we play. And we also need to set this this horizontal to 1. If we set this horizontal to 1, it's gonna play the right work animation clip, and if we set this to -1, it's gonna play the left work animation clip. Why? Because we have chosen that condition. So if I just double click on this movement blend tree, so we can see over here, if I select this plane tree, go over to inspector and bottom, we can see we set the parameter right over here where we moving. Once we going up, then in the y-axis this vertical parameter we setting 1, as you can see. So we need to set this horizontal and vertical parameter in the through our script, because we have chosen right over here. So let's go to script now. So we're gonna go over to animator, we're gonna use dot set float function, and this set float function in a quotation, it's gonna take first thing the parameter name, so in our case speed, so let's pass speed. And the second thing we have to set the value, so we're gonna set it to 1f, sorry, not 1f, basically we're gonna set movement, sorry, movement movement dot magnitude, movement dot square magnitude, or you can just use magnitude, basically the length of that vector, and close that up with semicolon. So this movement can be 0 plus 1 minus 1 depending upon what key we holding down. So if we hold down W S D or something like that, so this movement just gonna be 1 right away. But if we don't hold down anything, so this gonna be 0. So if we hold down, let's suppose D key, so this gonna be 1. So what we're doing, we're just going over to that animator, and we're setting this speed parameter to 1 once we just holding down A, S, D or W key. So this can be 1. So this is speed parameter, basically we're setting 1. And we do know, if we go to base layer, once we set this to 1 and select this transition, so 1 is greater than 0.1, so the condition over here getting met. So that's why it's gonna move over to this movement plane tree. And once this movement right over here is 0, so once we are not moving, so this movement right over here, movement dot square magnitude, basically the length or the value of that movement gonna be 0. So speed is 0. So we know that once we set the speed parameter to 0, it's gonna play the ideal animation clip right away. Basically that is the thing. So Control S to save your code, and now let's move over to Unity. Just wait for to compile, and once we done, we need to play or need to see that what's really happening. So just wait for to compile, and when it's done, we're gonna see that. Let's click on this play button in the top, and try to hold down A, S, D or W key. We're gonna able to see it's gonna move over to this movement blend tree right away, because we have chosen that condition. And we getting an error, because the error, if we get out of play mode and select this player game object, as you can see animator, it says none, basically empty, we don't have the reference. So what we have to do, we need to take this animator and drag it right over there. Now we have the player animator, as you can see, basically the reference. Now we can switch up the animation. So I'm going to go over to console, and let's clear it. Let's select this animator type one more time, and let's click on this play button in the top. Right now we should able to see from this player idle, we're gonna move over to player this movement plane tree. So now if I hold down any key, something like A, W, or let's suppose W, as you can see, we are moving to this movement plane tree, but we're not playing the correct animation clip. Once we are moving up, we need to play up animation clip. But how? Because we also need to set this horizontal and vertical parameter to 1 or -1 or 0 depending upon which direction we going, and we have chosen that condition in this movement plane tree. So let's get out of play mode, and let's go over to script one more time. For that, we're gonna go to down, we will go to animator one more time, dot set float, and the float, make sure close that up with semicolon. In quotation, it's gonna take the axis name. So first thing, we're gonna check for horizontal, so let's pass horizontal. And the second thing, it's gonna take the value you want to set. We just can right away set the value, so we can just do movement dot x. Why? Because this is horizontal, and movement dot x can be -1 or +1 or 0 depending upon which key we holding down. So this can be -1 or +1. So if we're moving to the, or if we just hold down D key, so we're going to the right direction. So that's why this movement dot x right over here gonna be 1. So we're setting this horizontal parameter to this value, which is 1. So if we set this horizontal parameter to 1, it's gonna play the right work animation clip. Why? Because if I say double click on this blend tree movement and select this blend tree and go over to inspector, because we have chosen that condition, as you can see clear in the x we have set 1. And once we set this 1, and if I just take this in the, we can see it's gonna play the right animation clip, and in the y 0. So basically that is the thing. and once we are going to the left, movement dot x right over here gonna be -1, and if we set this -1, so we have chosen condition right over here, so it's gonna play the left work, but indeed we just going right direction, we're not actually going to the left one. And now let's take a look, tackle the same thing as we have done for horizontal. So let's copy by Control C and let's paste it down by Control V, and we're gonna check for now vertical. So let's pass vertical, and for this movement dot x we're going to replace with movement dot y. So this movement dot y can be -1, +1, or 0 depending upon if we hold down W, so it can be +1. So it's gonna and if we just move to Unity and select this plane tree, go over to inspector, so if we have chosen 1, so once we set that parameter to 1, so 1 will be this basically the up one, so it's gonna play sorry, we need to basically drag this up, and we have to set this one to 1. Basically this is the top work and this is the down work, so I'm going to set it to -1 and 0. So once we set this player top work, basically this parameter to 1, this vertical parameter to 1, so and now if I just take this, sorry, I'm going to set this one to 0. So this is our left work. Let's drag the animation clip one more time. I just have done mistake, so I'm gonna lock it. So let's go to project tab. I'm gonna do this minus, yes, I don't want. So this is the top work, so we have done mistake. So let's drag one more time. So let's 2D, let's hit this plus icon 4 times, because we have 4 animation clip: right, top, down, and left. So let's add motion fill, and let's set all of this to 0 0 0 0 0 0. So now let's drag the animation clip one by one. So firstly I'm going to take the right one. So let's this is right, so let's drag it right over here, and let's find the left one, let's drag it over here, and make sure you just in order we have done horizontal and then vertical. And now I'm going to choose the top one over here, so let's drag it right over here, and let's select the down one, let's select it right over here. So once we are moving to the right, we need to play the right animation clip, so that's why we're going to choose this one, and over here in the -1, and once we are moving up, we need to play the top work animation clip. So that's why in the Y I'm going to set or this vertical parameter in the Y axis, we're going to set it to 1, and for the bottom one we are going down, we need to play the down animation clip. So that's why this vertical parameter I'm going to set in the Y axis to -1, and now it's done. So if I just take this red dot to up, it's gonna play the top work animation clip, as you can see right over here in the bottom, and once I take this one down, it's playing the down work animation clip, and the left and right. I hope you get the idea. So I'm gonna go over to script, let's click on this lock button one more time to unlock it. So I'm gonna go to Animator tab, and let's select, and let's go to script. So I hope you get the idea. So this movement dot y can be -1 or +1 0 depending upon which key we holding down. So if we hold down something like W key, so this gonna give right over here, this gonna give right over here +1. So if we go to Unity and select this plane tree, go to inspector, and then right over here, so one we have chosen, once we set this one, it's gonna play this up work animation clip, because this is the top work animation clip. And once we set that to -1, it's gonna play the down work animation clip, because we have chosen -1, as you can see it right over here. I hope you get the idea. So this can be -1 +1. So basically we just going over to this vertical parameter, basically this or this one right over here, we're setting that to -1 or +1 0 depending upon what key we holding down. So I hope you get the idea, and Control S to save your code, and we have done the same thing for horizontal movement. And now let's move over to inspector, basically Unity, and let's have a look. And now if I just click on this play button in the top, once we are holding down W key, we should play the top work animation clip. And let's have a look. So as you can see, indeed it's playing the top, and once I hold down S key, we going down. So in that moment we playing the down animation clip. You can see it right over here, the top and the down, and this value just getting resized. It's getting -1 +1 depending upon what key we holding down. I hope you get the idea. And we just setting, because we just setting this parameter through our code. But the problem is that once we are moving to the left direction, we're not playing the left work animation clip. So we need to flip our character to the left direction, so it's gonna seems like that we moving or playing the left animation clip. So let's get out of play mode and let's go to script now. For that, we're gonna create a pull parameter just to keep track of which direction we are looking. So let's go to top of our class and let's make it private. It doesn't need to be public. That will be pull, and we can call this one something like facing right. And by default I'm gonna set it to true and close that up with some colon. Why we set it to true? Because the right work animation clip will be played, and that was that we just wanted. So we just gonna look to the right direction, and that is the thing. So we're gonna go over to now update function, and over here we're gonna check if movement dot x, basically if movement dot x, if it's lesser than zero point 0.1 f, and make this curly brackets. At the same time we are looking to the right direction, and we have to type, and we're going to check if facing right is true. So movement dot x right over here can be -1 or +1. So let's suppose we hold down a key, so this is gonna be -1, and -1 we do know, so we're gonna go to the left direction. So in that moment we need to flip our player game object. So we're checking right over here if movement dot x, if it's lesser than 0.1, and -1 is definitely lesser than 0.1. At the same time, if we are looking to the right direction, so in that moment what we have to do, we need to flip this character. To flip, if we select this player game object in hierarchy, go over to inspector, then transform, rotation, and set this y to something -180, it's flipping to the left direction. As you can see, we cannot see, but we gonna see. So basically we need to play around with this y axis. So I'm gonna set back to 0. To do so, let's go over to inspector, and to set that, firstly we're going to go over to that transform as we seen, as we saw. So we will go to Euler angles, and this Euler angles have x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. So that's why we're going to set equal to new vector 3, which has also x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis, and close that up with semicolon. So in the x, what we're going to do over here, we're going to put 0f, and in the y we're going to put right over here -180f y. Once we set -180f, it's flipping to the left direction. So that's why. So we're going to set -180f, and in the z we're going to set it to 0. And once we flip to the left direction, we're no longer gonna able to look to the right direction. So that's why I'm gonna set facing right parameter to false after flipping this character to the left direction. So let's go to script. So after flipping our character, I'm gonna set this facing right parameter to false. So let's set equal to false, and control S to save your code and go over to Unity. So we're gonna have that once we are flipped to the left direction, live. So once we hold down a key, so it's gonna go over to left direction. So let's click on this play button in the top, and player gonna seems like that it's playing the left animation clip right away. So let's have a look first. So if I now click hold down a key, we can see we going, I'm really apologize for that. So we going to the left direction, but the problem is that once we holding down D key, we not moving at all to the right direction by now. So we also need to set back this 180 to 0. So if I select this player game object, go over to inspector, as you can see in transform in y rotation, it's set to 180. But we need to set back to 0 once we going to the right direction. So we need to set it to 0. So to do so, let's get out of play mode and let's go to over to script. So we're gonna check also, we will check else if we will check firstly movement.x if it's greater than 0.1 f. So basically movement.x, basically horizontally we checking if this movement.x gonna be 1 once we hold down d key. So we just going to the right direction. So once we going to the right direction, we need to flip this character one more time to right direction. So we're checking right over here movement.x, so this gonna be 1, so 1 gonna be greater than zero point 0.1, so the condition over here getting true. At the same time, I'm gonna check if we looking to the left direction. So and we checking if facing right is equals to false. Basically we not looking to the right direction, so let's make this for curly brackets. Basically means we looking to the left direction. Firstly we checking if we moving to the right direction, at the same time we not looking to the right direction. As you can see, facing right is false. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna copy this line of code by control C. So let's copy this by control C, and let's paste it right over here by control V. So what we're gonna do, in the y axis we're gonna set back to 0. Basically we're setting that y rotation in the y axis to 0, so it's gonna flip to the right direction one more time. And after flipping this player game object totally to the right direction, we need to set this facing right parameter, this parameter right over here to true one more time, because we gonna look to the right direction by now. So that's why after flipping that, we're gonna set this facing right to true and close that up with semicolon, and control S to save your code. Now let's move over to Unity. So we're gonna see that player game object and now gonna move left and right, up and down, or just gonna play those animation clip independently, depending upon what key we holding down. So now if I just click on this play button in the top and let's have a look, it's gonna work fine by now. Let's have a look. So now if I try to move to the left direction, we playing left animation clip. As you can, basically we just flipping our character indeed. And if we going right, we playing the right work animation clip, and indeed it's happening. And once we moving up, we playing up animation clip. Once we moving down, we playing the down animation clip. And once we are not moving at all, just standing at one pose, we playing the ideal animation clip. So I hope you get the idea. So I'm gonna get out of play mode. I hope you get the idea that how you can just make a plane tree to take care of which direction you need to play, sorry, which animation you should play, or which direction you want to go. With that, you need to play that animation clip as well. So I hope you get the idea of this. And lastly, thanks for watching this video. I will see you in the next video as soon as possible. Those videos just gonna come out. So I will see you in the next tutorial. For now, bye. I will see you in the next tutorial. So goodbye.